So we have quite a small research community here, around about just over 100 research active staff altogether, and that's across the different disciplines. So when we think about originality in research terms, we're sometimes thinking about asking the same fundamental questions that have been asked before by previous researchers, but approaching it in a new way, so using new methods. Or it might be that we're using some of the traditional methods to explore further questions. So we're really using tried and tested ways of exploring new ideas and so on. Both of these are different approaches to pushing the boundaries of knowledge, and the important thing at the end of the day is to bring new insight and new knowledge that will be of interest both to the community of researchers, but also to the wider world too.
So part of what we do here at Glasgow School of Art Exhibitions is to support staff who are doing research projects. This exhibition, Studio Paintings, shows the space of the studio as an endless space of imagination and skill. Richard's worked on over 40 paintings over a 2-year period of the same studio space, which is his own studio out at Kinning Park Complex in Glasgow. He basically sets up within his studio environment different projections, like he projects photographs and film onto the walls and surfaces of the studio, but he actually paints in the darkness. He paints during the day, but he blacks out the space, and it's really because he wants the light to come out of the paintings in the way that he paints them.
The work I make is so kind of intuitive in a way, like I change my mind while I'm doing something, so I can't, it's not predictable what will happen. And I guess that's part of what I find interesting about making work, is I don't know what I'm going to do. The work I made before this series of paintings was large scale. It was like, over kind of 8 foot tall, 8 foot high, and maybe 15 foot wide, that's what I expect. That's what the work I was going to carry on with. But I kind of was, just by chance and by an opportunity, I kind of started to make other work to do with interiors and to do with light and dark and shadow, and the kind of, I suppose, the mysteries of actually how you paint light. How can you suggest light on a board with bits of mud and and sort of oil? How can that suggest light? Those kind of conventions of representation and conventions of vision. How can that translate into you can see light in a painting? It still seems kind of magical. The research I'm involved with is to do with painting as a sort of physical act. The actual how you can make an equivalence and paint for something that exists in the world, and to do with kind of just the history of representation as well. How do you actually the signs that we kind of use, the conventions of representation are kind of there to be used, and it's how can you find an authentic way of representing the world, that kind of that gives people access. I'm interested in how people access the work as well. So I'm not trying to make something that's very esoteric. I'm trying to make something that people can relate to, and people, if there's an image in it that can be seen and recognised, then that's a linked into the painting immediately, and then you can be as abstract as you want with that. You can sort of play about with that as much as possible, but the kind of playing about with this, pushing the possibilities of the sign are kind of important, I think. The way that, I suppose, when Picasso became interested in African art, part of that interest, or certain areas of African art, the interest is in how they play with signs, how they kind of push the image as far as possible. So they still have 2 eyes and a nose, but within that they have this fantastic, inventive and kind of witty approach to making works. I'm trying to be as inventive as possible, and the kind of research the research area is also about basic things like how you paint light, how you paint space, how you work with space, how you work with creating a space in a painting, through colour or through drawing. A lot of the work is about drawing as well. It's almost like the drawing is a big aspect of the paintings. It's how you draw with the paint, really. And that allows you to be kind of minimal and kind of, you can make a mark that suggests something. You don't have to describe you don't have to paint the whole thing. You can suggest it with a line and a shape, and it kind of, the viewer does the rest of the work for you. They invent the image in a way, so they meet you halfway.